Okay? Yes. We can start? Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, welcome to this panel this afternoon, which will be on relationship between psychedelics and psychotherapy, and connected to what the ancient traditions, wisdom bring to this, I would say, new or renew technology, if we can say, about psychedelic, and different topics. So we have me and four more presenters, and each one of them is going to have a specific lecture. So it will not be a conversation. Maybe we will see at the end how it works. But so the idea is that you give your talk. The two online, so I will see them later, and two here, Karina and Hayo, excuse me, it's Hayo, and then we will have some time for questions, for discussions. Okay, so actually I will start, but very shortly to give them more time. And the only thing I wanted to share with you today is, because this is about psychedelic and psychotherapy with these new possibilities that psychedelic are offering today. But in the 60s, I'm a close disciple and friend of Stan Grof. So I've been trained by Stan Grof more than 30 years ago, and I'm training psychotherapists in holotropic breathwork since about 25 years. And that from Stan Grof's previous experiences with psychedelics, when psychedelics have been out of the frame, then this is how with his wife, late wife Christina, they invented the holotropic breathwork, which came out of the discoveries that he had made with psychedelics, and particularly with LSD. And the interesting thing today is, now there is a different movement, and I think that today psychedelic therapy could also take benefit, from what we have experienced for these 30, 40 years experiencing with breathwork, holotropic breathwork. And so it's kind of, I don't know, a balance or, vice versa thing. And even if there are some differences, because there are differences, but I will not speak about that today. There are things we have to take into account, which for me are very, very important. And the main thing I would like to mention is that because today we have trainings in different countries about psychedelic therapy, but in most countries, it's not legal to work directly, experientially with psychedelics, even if we know that people may have personal experiences. So what is offered in this training is to have holotropic breathwork experience personally. And so this is why, it's really, really well connected. And so there is one thing which is common is the way you have to put a framework, when you start a group session. It can be holotropic breathwork or with psychedelics. And this framework has to be very clear, very a real frame, with not leaving the premises, the space where we work, not having, not endangering other people or even yourself, not no sexual activity, etc. And this can be, at the beginning, for some people, a little bit a little bit shocking to see, wow, it's really not friendly, but it is exactly what is needed, because this creates a clear boundaries, limits, what is allowed, what is okay, what is safe. It's a way of creating a safe container, and that's important. And what I observed, in my practice is that actually it's very reassuring for people, to have this very clear framework. But also it's something which opens multiple possibilities, because everything which is within this container is okay. So I think that's something we cannot not do very specifically each time we start working with both breathwork or psychedelics. And the second thing I would like to mention is that, of course, technical and competence, technical abilities are very important and are prerequisite, but they are not far from sufficient. For Stan Grof, an important aspect in breathwork is what he called the inner intelligence, or inner healing intelligence, or inner healing, inner intelligence processing, or also he called that inner healer. And the therapist and the client both trust that the client has this inner knowledge inside of him, which can guide him or her through the healing process. It means that as therapists, you are not, even if you have to be well trained, but you are not considered as an expert, as someone who knows better than the client what is good for him or what is right for him. You have to follow the process, to accompany very, very carefully, very close, but not to guide in the sense of giving an orientation. You always have to follow and to be here to reflect something from the inner process of the client. And so to facilitate, to allow this inner intelligence to arise, the client needs to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel accepted, and not judged, and see as they are. And by doing so, we create what I like to call a field, a healing field, which is really an energetic field, which is something with a very subtle quality, which is difficult to describe because it's not, it's informal, but it can be sensed. And this is a big responsibility, I think, for therapists to create not only a framework which is clear, but also this energetic field which will be filled by presence, by acceptance, by unconditional love, etc. So by the quality of this energetic field, it will allow the healing process of the clients, to really get to his full potential, to his full capacity. I will not develop that, but Alan Shore is referring to this fundamental shift in how to approach a client in therapy as a right brain psychotherapy. So I like this expression, and it's very interesting, to see all the differences by behaving mainly through the left brain or through the right brain. So I just mentioned that, but I will not be developing that. So going back to the concept of presence, presence would be a full awareness. How to develop that, this quality, this sensitivity in our openness to other, unconditional acceptance, to allow the clients who are there to abandon themselves to a process that sometimes can be challenging, difficult. Of course, this quality of presence is not something which can be learned like theoretical or technical knowledge. It's a faculty which we can develop gradually through first our own experiences, through delving into our deepest inner spaces, through meditation, not judgmental reactions, and above all for me through humility. As therapists, even if we have to take care and to be responsible for the group, we have to act with a lot of humility and be ready to be vulnerable, because ultimately, we are a human being in front of another human being, even if you or I are the client at that time and I'm the therapist, but we are both human beings. As I want to give more time for you, I will just go to the end. My idea was to focus really on how this presence, this openness is as more effective as the trance in breathwork therapy or the medicine can open. It's not only about what we do, but how we are accompanied. And when I was just, thinking of this talk, I received a message from a client, recently, and I thought it would be nice to give her the last words, because what she said is really, for me, an example of what I share with you. So we did LSD session, and this is a testimony after this session. In the process of integrating what we call the hero's journey I made with you, I wish to thank you deeply for the healing space you accompanied me into. You allowed me to enter a space of insecurity, horror, and suffering passed down through my maternal lineage of abuse and mistrust of the masculine. You gave me the opportunity to encounter this immense suffering I've inherited, and I seem to have been able to put a real yes inside myself in this space. And from that yes sprang the light, and there, words cannot describe what I encountered, but it sure feels like grace. Thank you so much. Thank you for this great companion teaching. Thank you for offering me to accompany me there with security and love. Thank you for your confidence I felt in this moment. Thank you for allowing me to encounter what accepting allows to illuminate. Thank you and blessing. And actually with this lady, I didn't do anything special. I was only fully present in front of her. She was sitting on a mattress. And I had no intention, no goal. I just was there, totally there, with no expectation, no interpretation of what she was experiencing, which I didn't know exactly. And she opened her eyes, and we had a full eye contact for quite, I don't know, it was quite a long time, I don't know, but it lasted the time she needed. There was no boundary, no limit, no resistances at all. It was a total transparency. I think, you know, for me, I will never forget this time because she really opens everything and she let me enter, and the result is what she just mentioned. So it was also a healing experience for me, actually, yeah? And a deep spiritual teaching about the power of presence and in the therapeutic context. So this is what I wanted to share with you quickly. Okay, so now, don't wait a minute, I need to find my, oops. So we will give not the microphone, but the time for Michael Smith. Michael, you are going. So Regina said, don't introduce people because everything was written on the program. But Michael, you are going to talk about psychedelics and the active use of the sacred. Is that okay?
The active use of the sacred.
Okay.
Can you say where they are, maybe?
Yeah, because I don't know. Can you tell us where you are?
I am in the United States right now. I'm at my retreat center in Michigan.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So you have.
Shall I begin?
Yeah, please. So you have 15, 16 minutes, and okay.
Okay. Thank you for your talk and introduction, Bernadette. The audio is not very good for me. There's an echo in the groups. It's hard to be clear. But I was able to follow you, but I really have a strain, so I may have missed something. I don't know. But I'll just begin.
We hear you perfectly. Huh?
Yeah. So, as you may have said, I'm a clinical analytical psychologist and a medical anthropologist, so I'm coming from this background. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, perfectly.
Excellent.
Okay, good. So it's a Jungian background, and it's what I've learned from indigenous cultures, working with plant medicines, and particularly the mushroom, which is what I'm going to address today, the psilocybin mushroom. But my concern, some 50 years ago when I began, was there were no models at that time except Grof, Stan Grof emerging to guide us in how to use psychedelics. And I studied with him 40 years ago, learned the breathwork, the holotropic breathwork and all that, and used his approach. But as I got more experience and encountered more nuanced ways of working with plant medicines and with mushroom, I discovered in indigenous cultures, often there's a more active approach than just aligning with the holotropic or inner healer process, because people do get stuck, or they may be very possessed or taken over by some inner force or spiritual force. And so the curandera, the shaman, they take a more active role in the ceremony at those points. And what I noticed was, too, the sacred is always not just implied, but actively brought in as part of the ceremony in many indigenous contexts that I've been in. So I wanted to design for myself and for clients that I work with the best of both worlds, the psychological, therapeutic world and the indigenous world. And every culture has their system of understanding what is health and what is sickness, and how to diagnose and how to treat it. And I like to compare them and see what we can learn from both and exchange knowledges back and forth, and then put them together in kind of holistic synthesis. So this holistic synthesis is my framework that I advocate and that I employ myself under certain conditions. So basically, I prepare my clients by having them come to understand that there will be a ritual process, a kind of protocol or structure that is safe and proceeds in stages. I prepare them with this information and help them focus on why they've come for help or why they want to enter the ceremony, and try to target what the issue or the problem or the suffering or the trauma is, so that that's clear beforehand, and also to suggest if they get in there and they should feel stuck with all this, they can simply ask for help and expect it, and it's like kind of transcendental downloads. Information somehow comes in and can speak exactly to the place where they're stuck or where they're hurting, and they can gain insight and clarity into it, and they can sometimes unburden themselves or purge and heal. And in Ecuador, Peru, and in Mexico, central Mexico, where I studied the use of mushrooms in sacred contexts, I saw that they're applied to just about everything, from psychological, emotional problems, to spiritual problems, to community problems, and they weren't limited to just the kind of the Western psychedelic psychotherapy model of focusing on mental disorders, depression, anxiety, this sort of thing. And they also had a communal context. In Western models of psychotherapy, it's been very individualistic. One client and a therapist alone in a consulting room. But in indigenous cultures all over the world, it tends to be more of a public thing or a communal thing. Either it's out in the open before the community or the tribe or the local section of a city. People come and they gather around, family comes and they support what's going on. And in the psilocybin ceremonies in Mexico, for example, you can have, there may be one patient, but there can be 15, 20 people that are family and friends that will come in and be part of the ceremony, bringing their support, bringing their positive intention, you know, and also being a source of information and wisdom in the ceremony. So I like to, in the ceremonies that I run, I like to have support people in there, not just two sitters, but people that love this person and care about this person, whether it be friends or family. Also, I have assistants and co-facilitators that are involved in the process. And for those co-facilitating or leading with me, we're all on the same page in terms of this idea of actively engaging with the sacred, whether that be the spirit becomes attached to the mushroom, or it be a sense of the divine, or a sense of being of light, or an angel, whatever comes up for them, you know. Or it may just be a deep feeling, or a kind of a telepathic like download from a higher source of wisdom or a higher power, but encourage them to connect with that and take their problem there. It's kind of an approach, we don't have the solution, but the solution is in there if you know how to go in deeper and connect with that source. So connecting with the sacred, the active use of the sacred, is what I call this process of encouraging the client to engage and interact with the helping spirits that come into the ceremony. Now, from a Western framework, we think in terms of archetypes, transpersonal beings or dimensions, and so on. But in an indigenous context, it's more the spirits or the gods, and Mother Earth or the Mama that the cultural framework makes available to people to access that way. But the point is to actively dialogue with or interact with the entity that we're calling sacred. Much like Jungian's idea of active imagination. And he himself in this terrible suffering and midlife crisis documented in the Red Book. In that, his only way of pulling together the pieces of his life and bringing them into some type of unity was to dialogue with these different entities or characters or figures that came up in his deep states of consciousness. And in that, he found the center, what he called the center. The self is what he called it initially, and then he said it's the center. Later said it's the center in the totality. The totality of what? Of all the parts, the complexes, the defense systems, everything. The center itself is no part at all. It's a source, it's like a divine source of guidance, inspiration, healing, and the parts around it are what need the attention. So Jung discovered that by actively engaging and dialoguing with these parts about whatever concerned him, he got wisdom, he got insight. And he stood in a very solid position of holding his own point of view and asking questions, not just automatically accepting, but questioning back and forth if this is true, waiting for more clarity on that. So this insight from Jung, which I think is fairly shamanistic, is something that just lies behind my own understanding of the importance of just engaging with whatever aspect of the sacred or the transcendent is opening up or showing itself to you. And the benefit of that is that I find in the Western model, we emphasize the chemistry, the molecule, the tryptamines and so on, psilocin. And it's true, that's like the hardware functioning that opens up, relaxes your defense system, opens up your access to deeper or higher dimensions of awareness, of consciousness. And it'll do that for everybody. You just inject them with the chemicals, and people will open, and they'll be able to explore better because they're unblended or disidentified or differentiated from all the parts of their personality system that are suppressing them or holding them in a narrow framework or a narrow box. So the chemical itself can do that. The chemical does not tell you how to engage these transcendent entities, nor how to benefit from the downloads, But I find like in Mexico, in Morales State, in Oaxaca, in Chiapas, the curanderos, their equivalents, they all presuppose this. So there's candles in the context, there's hopao, cacao, and there's saints, icons of them, which represent local deities from their traditions. And each of them has some archetypal power, you might say, to illuminate or to address precisely the problem the patient is having. So those energies are brought in. And in Oaxaca, in Oaxaca, Jimenez, this Maria Sabina, phenomenal woman, she would go into the altered state in the ceremony, and she would chant and clap her hands because she didn't have a drum. And these different archetypal powers, would come through, and she would say, I am spirit woman says, I am spirit lawyer says. These are different archetypal forces she's bringing into the ceremony. Take spirit lawyer. What is a spirit lawyer? It's a shamanistic conception that the healer's role is to help negotiate the forces of darkness, or the forces that are threatening the patient's well-being, and negotiate with them so they will relax, back off, or be ejected from the sacred space that's been created by the facilitator, the Kurandara. And translate that into Jungian analytic terms, it's relaxing the defense system protectors. And if you're going to imagine the Jungian autonomous complex, which would be a wounded part somehow in the center, and orbiting it like planets would be these invisible defense system protectors who attack it, who shame it, who create fear in it, who shame it, and so on. With the psilocybin, you can ask those to relax, but the healer can call in the spirit lawyer to help that process go on if the patient is overwhelmed. So this is what I mean by the active use of the sacred. And I'm putting that forth because in the Western model of psychedelic research and psychotherapy, which I follow closely because I'm on the staff of 3 universities directing doctoral studies in this area of psychedelic research. So I'm getting all the fresh data from the MAPS organization and reading rich stuff that my students have produced and staying up to date that way. And what I see almost nowhere is the intentional use of the sacred and the local mythopoetic traditions of the people to address the illness or the problems.
Okay.
So I think that's something the indigenous
1 minute left.
people have to offer. That's something that the indigenous way of working with this medicines have to offer that can enrich our own. And I'm not talking about stealing ideas from other cultures. I'm talking about an open dialogue exchange with other cultures so we can all benefit together in some type of holistic synthesis that makes us better humans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. So we keep question for the end, okay? If you don't mind. So you mentioned Jung several times, and it was what? Yes, you hear me through. Yeah, no, okay. Okay, no, it was okay. Huh? Yeah, but if I put my microphone on, it will be terrible. So no, I think it's okay. 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 So yeah, you mentioned Jung several times, and I think you gave a nice transition for you, Mihaela. So I don't have my paper with me. Can you please tell us again exactly your topic about the connection with Jungian archetypes and so on?
Bernadette, I can't hear the echoes too bad. Could you restate it maybe slowly so I can get your question?
No, question later, at the end. We will have questions.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So, Mihaela.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Hello to everyone, and I'm very happy to be here and bring you some of my views upon the problem, which is a very deep and important one. I will share my screen for the moment, as I would like to present better some slides. Okay, so healing the twisted, contaminated human archives by the natural restructuring in Aya ceremonies. That is my ability to work in. Well, in the Jungian collective unconscious frame, archetypes are the structuring factors of the individual psyche. And their quality of genuine condition has been deteriorating along the millennia of human interaction functions constricted by the aggressive fearful condition of surviving in life. So they are bringing only a part of their original meaning, and they, when they emerge to more or less to structure the individual contents. And remember, different social, cultural, religious, and those ruling programs influence the way those archetypes act from inside in influencing the structure of gender complexes, for example, and the ego complex facing the world demands of survival. And I would just like to remember Dick Strassman's data in his book about the DMT as the spirit molecule. For example, he working in his research starting in 1990, well, actually he restarted extensive scientific study of the mental and perceptual effects of psychedelic drugs, especially DMT. And he seeks to understand these most mysterious substances and their profound effects on human consciousness. And as a result of his research, come to name DMT the spirit molecule, because its effects include many features of religion experiences, such as visions, voices, disembodied consciousness, powerful emotions, complex and transforming insights, and feeling of paramount significance for the individual. And in now times, in 21st century, there are also some important studies and also meta-analyses about kind of how these DMT ceremonies helped the process of development of individual psyche. I will go directly to the last one in 2023, is the meta-analysis of a doctoral student. And the study was on the effect of changing the big 5 factors of personality following the administration of psychedelic DMT, and the data suggests medium and long-term effects on openness to experience, consciousness, neuroticism, and extroversion. And these results have possible implications related to therapeutic approach to measure depressive disorder, anxiety, or addictions, for example. Well, several years ago, a cluster of Mayan was undergoing the experience of ayahuasca ceremonies, myself included. And mine and their experiences included dreams, visions, and very unusual so-called concrete or physical experiences. Some of the latter were visible to all people, splitting out from the inwardly psychic into perceived affect or sensation. Well, I started to stay aware in the process, not to succumb entirely to the visions and emotions experienced. And I started to work on my emotions and the symbolic significance of the remembered scenes, visions, basic emotions. And I worked also with the people involved in ayahuasca ceremonies, helping them to stay aware in the process. And I came to this conclusion that ayahuasca kills the archetypal function, turning them for the original condition through both DMT and Icaros chanting, that means rhythm, harmony, and melody, together with the active influence of DMT. This complex and multi-level process started by DMT is influencing the way the basics are contaminated, affected to the way in which parental figures, for example, or femininity or masculinity are experienced in the real life of an individual, in his self-image and self-esteem. In this context, the therapeutic impact of the DMT and ayahuasca ceremonies acts to re-establish step-by-step the natural, authentic influence of the archetypal energy of anima and animus, feminine and masculine archetypes. There is emotional kind of restructuring process of the genuine archetypal energy, which is visible in analytical work using some case materials of people experiencing the ayahuasca ceremonies, for example, dreams and painted images and description of the visions. When in a ceremony, an actual aspect of archetypal energy develops, fascination appears, and the ego complex is more or less blocked in its usual way of reacting, and the unconscious wounds are addressed instead. This compulsive luminosity, in Jung's terms, for the ego leads to the limitation of the freedom of the ego conscience. So ego consciousness is restricted, it is no longer free to project on reality with old patterns. And if awareness intervenes, the polarity changes from fear to meaning. Within the being of the human beings, there is this powerful impact on awareness, which is an experiential field of archetypal energy and light. This rhythm of awareness is also our direct knownness of being, a direct knownness of being. Mother Aya is always hinting about life, not against life, because ayahuasca is life itself. Ayahuasca helps to get out of fear and to the light of life, no matter what. This experience of our primordial and foundational awareness is not a belief in some form of theoretical liberation. This ongoing experience of our field of innermost awareness reflects a phenomenological, felt sense of actuality of being within the wholeness, the totality. So this feltness reflects a direct experiential knowing of being with a whole range of opposite sides, let us denominate it by the beingness of being. This experiential field of primordial awareness is described in many different philosophical, psychological, and spiritual traditions. And it is much larger and more comprehensive than a regular range of human conscious understanding. I should say that our primordial awareness is our non-conceptual knowing openness of being. So this experience of our ontological nature at the ground of being is self-exploration. The experience of the archetypal source is our innate luminous experience within us as our very wholeness. Because wholeness is our ontological reality of being full consciousness. So this direct luminous experience dissolves the ontological anxiety of annihilation and death. It evolves as an experience of deathless awareness or timeless awareness, which may dissolve our fear of death and dissolves our restrictive vision of our life survival. When our mind is saturated with a traumatic experience, our mind can no longer metabolize lived experiences of regular life events as not menacing the being. The ground of the experience in ayahuasca ceremonies metabolize the essence, the phenomenological experience phenomenological events and phenomenological sensations, and our memory of experience. In a way, metabolized experience dissolves into luminous energy, and the luminous energy is further dissolved into our embodied field of wholeness. And I will present briefly two instances of analysis under this idea that when you are in the eye of the storm, you are in the position to stay centered in a personal and collective crisis and transform the menacing energies into light. So one of my patients, a woman suffering from anxiety as a trait, which was amplified as she entered into middle-age transformation, started the Aya ceremonies. She remembers her first encounter with Aya, a long-lasting experience of a vivid roundabout carousel with vivid menacing colors, rotating towards herself. Actually, the forces never arrived on her, but the vision continued for a long time, she said, and she was not able, quote, to save herself. What was the meaning of that menacing forces? Following the therapeutic advice, in the following session, or let's say following sessions, she succeeded to be more and more on the condition of a spectator, not involved completely emotionally in the drama. And the insight comes, quote, "That's the way events in my life taught me, and I thought I lived my life, but actually I lost the direction." Another difficult experience for her was when she found herself somehow buried in the earth, and from there desperately trying to catch a glimpse of the sky above. A fugitive image of the sky above, the sky images rapidly disappeared as she continued more and more fearful to find a way to arrive at the surface. And that experience makes her aware of, I quote, "the fear of death, my unlived life. I lost the taste of the joy of life, and that is about life. I have to find the light in my life." So again, when you are in the eye of the storm, you are in the position to stay centered in a personal and collective crisis and transform the menacing energies into life. Thanks for being with me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so now it will be your turn, Hayo. And you are talking about integration of the experience, something like that?
That's right.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think it's a very important thing to you.
I'm just trying to reply because my presentation didn't work due to integration problems. Okay. Just a second.
So you cannot use your PowerPoint?
Yes. Is it okay like that? Can you see? Okay. So, yeah, I'm Hayo Müller from Ovid Clinic Berlin, and I want to talk about the art of integration in how we call it psychedelic augmented therapy. And yeah. I want to start with a quotation by a Swiss writer, Max Frisch, who said, "When we travel, we are like a film at the moment of exposure. It is memory that will develop it." And this quotation carries a lot of parallels to the process of integration. Before the digital age, we all had to wait for a number of days until we could hold a photograph in our hands from an image we took from maybe a beautiful journey. And during the process of development, depending on your skill level, you can play around with certain parameters like coloring or brightness, or maybe enlarging some details. You could also completely mess it up and ruin the photograph, or you could also choose to not develop it at all and waste its potential. And the same is true for psychedelic experiences. There are several levels of integration. On the individual level, you have the cognitive aspect of assimilation and accommodation. I'm not going to explain that today. You have the emotional level, which is about acceptance and self-regulation. And you have the bodily or behavioral level, which is about incorporating and expressing what you came out of the experience. Of course, there's also a collective level of how we are in relationship with others, how we interact, and how we embed things into culture. Okay. I think. Okay. On all mentioned levels, I had to integrate quite a lot when I went to India for the first time in the late 90s, and was confronted with very new impressions I gained. I was helping a Dutch friend to set up a center for street kids and sick people, disabled people. And when I returned 6 months later, I had a hard time to readapt to my home culture. Cognitively, I was struggling and arguing with the value-based system I was confronted with. So much material values and not so many spiritual aspects or human aspects. I felt sometimes sad and isolated, and had difficulties to process things and to express what I had experienced. And so without the there was just one exception. People I felt familiar with were those who I knew had undergone the same experience, who went to India themselves. So this is also a metaphor of how a common experience can share connection. Let me try a definition of integration, what I mean by it. In his recent book, Mark Ashala wrote, he seems to be known, the creation of structures at a higher logical level with a capacity to contain multiple elements, and at a certain moment may have been strange or alien to the structure. Actually, Mark in his book refuses to really give a definition and rather uses metaphors. Nonetheless, I like this definition and I kind of took it in. Okay. So, coming back in a second. So, beyond the examples I have just given, like going on a journey or developing a photo, there are several more. Some of them I want to just mention. One metaphor is adding a piece of one piece to a bigger puzzle and creating a new, bigger image. Another one would be planting a seed, which also involves taking care of it and making a commitment for an experience to develop, to unfold. It needs attention, it needs resources, it needs time, it needs protection. And also decompression from a spice or spacewalk, and which fits very well to Grandmother Spider and the visual art for this meeting, weaving a web and connecting experiences, connecting individuals, connecting maybe even aspects of your own self, like our other speakers have pointed out. The goals of integration are twofold. On the one hand, we want to maximize benefits, and on the other hand, we want to minimize harms. Benefits would be cultivating insights that had happened, or also taking time and doing effort to revisit the experience, increasing connectedness, or implement value-based changes. On the harmful side, we have quite a lot of dangers. Many people suffer from mental, psychological decompensation while they get worse in their states. They may suffer social isolation. Maybe they come out of the experience and are looking for more, become sensation seekers and somewhat addicted to experiences. It can also lead to ego inflation or spiritual bypassing, which is illustrated in this picture that I found quite fitting. You see the psychonaut walking ahead and looking for the next experience and determined to go for more, go for a higher dosage maybe, or a more powerful substance. And he's being followed by a huge shadow that's trying to catch up and says, okay, come on, please integrate me. Somehow funny. I'm gonna skip some of the cultural aspects. From this slide, I just want to point out that in the book from Ken Wilber, Integral Spirituality, he emphasizes that also kind of maturity is needed, a kind of growing up, as he says, that makes actually the potential of mystical type experiences, of psychedelic experiences fruitful. It's not a big deal to feel special, to feel one with everything or whatever, or to wake up. This only describes a certain state of consciousness that can happen through either hard work, for example, meditation for many years, or different traditional aspects, or it can happen quite easily through psychedelics. But you have to outbalance it with the process of growing up, which takes a lot of self-development, reflection, and also, I like what has been said earlier, humility. And it's quite crucial that this goes together, and so we become part of the solution and not part of the problem in tackling the big global problems of humanity, like conflict, climate emergency, sexism, racism, and so on. I want to show you an example of integration, how we do it in our practice, in our clinic, and just illustrate one process I have accompanied earlier this year. Just in general, to get an overview how we work. We are a facility that works with ketamine-augmented psychotherapy, so there's not a lot of baggage in kind of cultural terms, so there are no traditions in that sense. It's a totally synthetic substance developed in the 60s. And we accompany patients for around 3 months. And during the process, they get 5 infusions of IV ketamine, which are accompanied by a therapist, and followed the next day with an integration session. As you might know, the effects of ketamine are not very long-lasting. The integration is quite important to have a more sustainable effect. We also offer pure integration-focused therapy for illegal substances after people have been struggling with former experiences. So maybe they took mushrooms or LSD on their own, and then they call us and say, okay, I don't know how to deal with it. Another thing we offer is non-pharmacological approaches, not so much breath work. We actually would like to have it more, but yeah, I think it takes a little bit more practice. But we offer, for example, stroboscopic light sessions or virtual reality. And in the future, we want to extend our program to group therapies as well, to a daycare center, and also in the future offer more substances once they are legalized. At the moment, we are part of studies using psilocybin for depression, and we are preparing for another study using 5-MeO-DMT, which may happen later this year. So looking forward to that. Let me just show you some pictures of our clinic. This is one of the rooms where we make the infusion, and on the right hand you see our so-called integration room, where people can just use creative means and get on their own to be creative. I have to speed up a little bit. So this patient I want to introduce was suffering from OCD for more than 20 years. She couldn't work because of her elaborate compulsive behaviors. And after years of therapy, she came to us. There was also one incident of sexual transgression she experienced when she was 11 years old. That will be important later again. On the second substance-assisted session, she made an interesting experience by meeting her former self, which took her on a journey and walked through the jungle and on a kind of discovery trip. And that was a part of her before she became ill. And so after the session, she said, okay, I obviously have killed the child because it was too painful to relate to that healthy part of herself. And so one part of her work was reconnecting to that part. Also during an integration session, we were finally talking about the traumatic event itself, which had been suppressed for many years and just had come up during an earlier therapy, during EMDR session. And she was able to relate to that and becoming more softened, more in touch with herself. And at the end of the process, much of her compulsive behavior was reduced and the depression was almost completely gone, which is quite remarkable. And in her overall evaluation of the therapy, she said, okay, if I can give you a possible 5 points, I would like to give you 10, which is really beautiful to wrap up. I just want to end with a quote from Walter Pankey, and he says, what one does with a psychedelic experience may be more important than merely having it. Without integration, the experience may be only an irrelevant memory, however beautiful. So thanks for listening, and maybe see you in Berlin at our conference in August. Okay.
Thank you. Very good, you are perfectly on time. Okay, so Karina, so
Yeah, I have a presentation, but it's so brief,
Ah.
and it's not.
You want to try? I have an adapter.
No, maybe. Is it already true? Okay. It's very good. Wow. I will invite you now to do a little break of hearing, of being outside, and I will invite you to go to the inner realms for just less than 1 minute, because then if not I don't have time, but just close your eyes for a little and breathe deeply. I will invite you to connect with this breath that allows us to be alive, this dynamic movement of inhalation and expiration, and that automatically connect us with our body, with the present moment, and rest the attention, the focus on the outside, in this air coming into the body, inhalation and exhalation. Full attention to this movement for seconds. And from this attention to the breath, we will change the attention to let come sensations from our body. Whatever is there, we will acknowledge it. Pure awareness of our sensations, what is coming from our inner world, from our body. Witnessing it. Only witnessing it. And I will call what Pierluigi was talking today about an expanded way of listening, with this connection with the body, listening with the whole body, what I will share with you today. If you want, you can open your eyes. If not, you can stay with the eyes closed, just listening, just feeling, just sensing the information. Because today is about this, what I will talk about. Education, transforming the world through education, inner, world, and social. All of us, we know that we are facing a global crisis. On one hand, an ecological crisis. I will repeat it, yes, but the temperatures are rising. We are passing through weather extremes and environmental degradation. Also, sea levels are rising. The Arctic is melting, coral reefs are dying, oceans are acidifying, and forests are burning. Just to mention, food and water insecurity brings economic disruption, war, conflict, terrorism, and extreme poverty around. I have been researching for this conference, and I have found that this year the United Nations has established a global crisis response group on food, energy, and finances, with a policy recommendations to go through it. On the other hand, on mental health, 300 million individuals are suffering from depression across the world. Suicide is the fourth leading cause among people between 15 and 29 years old. This is a data for World Health Organizations. We have to address that, and we know that Western societies are deeply individualistic, and loneliness is a problem that cuts across many of these conditions, such as depression, substance abuse, anxiety, and suicide. We are after a post-pandemic situation that, of course, has affected us. So we can say that we have a personal trauma and collective trauma. We are living that. The pathologies of this era seems to be very related to the world that we have created, that is disconnected. This system that is rooted in a great disconnection from Gaia, from Mother Earth. I'm saying things that everybody else knows, but in some point I'm going to start with this because we have to address it. Address it why? Because we are in a turning point. We are on a crossroad of challenging, but also of possibilities. Why possibilities? Because this new paradigm in mental health is arising and is emerging to face this crisis in this special moment. The research in psychedelic medical settings, hospitals, universities, are proving the benefits of psychedelics helping on mental health. Also, we know at the same time that psychedelics medicines have been rooted in all this wisdom of indigenous people. So we have these two so important things putting together in this moment. Of course, psychedelics are becoming the answer and the hope. And why? 4 things. Psychedelics are providing a shortcut to access to healing traumas. We were talking about personal and collective trauma. They can put patients, clients in transitory states where they can better process their memories and these traumas. And they can come from these journeys with a perspective that is freeing and healing. So, psychedelics can reconnect people with themselves and with nature. 2 important things for these moments. Find answer from the inner realms and heal deeply in many levels, but one of the levels that is most important that I want to address to is the body level, the embodied level, the experience. Changes in the international panorama and the policies are bringing the possibility of really have professionals specialized in mental health and future psychedelic therapists. It's really in this moment, as we all know, also is an urgent demand. There appear many courses, fortunately, many trainings, because many people want to be trained. I have been working since 5 years ago in a program that I want to, what I want to conceptualize here, I want to talk really, is about transpersonal integral education and the different condiments from personal, integral, that comes together. Because I think that a transpersonal integral education has the key aspects for this training of future therapists. Why? Altogether, they give a deep understanding of the psyches in altered state of consciousness, and also an excellent map of the role of our psyches. The word integral. Many authors have been talking about integral, the whole, the holos. Of course, it means taking into account the different dimensions of the whole human being. Rousseau, father of the French Revolution and Romanticism, was the first one addressing feeling on emotions in education and the need of it, feelings and emotions. So let's recapitulate. We were saying that we are immersed in a system that is disconnected us from the earth. Education has a lot to do with this. Since we are children, we are educating in this model, in this system. Claudio Naranjo, I have been studying with him a lot of years, and he's a reference for me. In the last years of his life, he was talking about education, that education can change the world. He wrote a book about that. And in his last conference, 5 years ago, he was saying, okay, education can change the world. By psychedelics are the ones that have to change the world now. Yeah, he was really a pioneer. Let's bring the word patriarchal. Claudio Naranjo talks about patriarchal mind that involves the hegemony of the father in the inner family. The concept of patriarchal mind is very connected with what Montori talks about reproductive education. That this comes from the concept of Newtonian and Cartesian machine, industrial organization of society, and is connected with a repetition, automatic, my child is calling me, my real child. With the instrumental acquisition, retention, and repetition of information. It's the sovereignty of the mind through all the other parts. This is the patriarchal mind working in reproductive education. So we are talking about the need of transcending the patriarchal mind. We need an education for wholeness. And Claudio Naranjo understands this wholeness as an integration between intellect, love, and instinctual freedom that is very connected with the child, the one that is suppressed in our current education, in patriarchal education. Don't say current, because it's changing more and more. Also, Montori is proposing an education that goes from the reproduction to a creative inquiry. The learner, that integrates the learner and their experience in the affects, emotions, subjectivity, and in the learning process. Emotions and feelings are integrated there. So, creative inquiry invites us to the exploration of the body, way of unlearning, social and personal habits, if it is the case, interests that model the way that we think and we are in the world, the way of being in the world. So this is the point, for me the most important point, that creative inquiry is talking about transformation. Because when we are talking about changing the being in the world, we are talking about a transformation process. And transformation is implicit in the psychedelic process. Every time we have psychedelics, we live a transformative experience in a way or in another. So, the most transformative tool that we have now available for the global change are the psychedelics. This is clear. For me, it's just to acknowledge that we, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health care workers, we are part of this system. We have been brought up in this system, in this process. So the process is of unlearning, healing. And I think that all of us are committed in this moment. We have trauma, and we are part of this collective trauma. It is necessary to address it and heal it. Relearn and transmit it to patients, clients, students, colleges. And we have beautiful trauma resources that we have been transmitted from our elders. To mention some of them, I was saying Claudio Naranjo, Stan Grof, Maslow, James. We have a wonderful academic corp of knowledge wonderful integration preparations tool. And the transpersonal psychology is the perfect theoretical map to train psychedelic therapies. Why? Because it's addressing the mystical experience. The mystical experience is across many of the experiential psychedelic journeys. And another thing is that it's addressing the word spirit in the academy. We are talking about psychology, transpersonal psychology. The way educations come from educere. That means guide, orient, also bring out. What potentially is inside. So maybe this makes us to think that maybe to put inside, maybe educate to remember who we truly are, guide to remember. Well, so for me, the transformational process is under a knowledge of feeling emotions in the class. I have been working in the University of Barcelona for nearly 20 years. And I did it very experientially. Fortunately, the chair of the program let me do my work in the body, meditation, and all this. I have seen all the changes that students were having when they came from a regular class, that they are listening, asking, rationalizing, analyzing, asking more when they relaxing their body, start to flourish in some point. When they finish, they don't know sometimes what they have been doing because they are so used to receive, but they feel good. They sometimes are crying. Just connect, they are master students, just connect a little there with the body, with the heart, and they are
alive. They are alive.
They are alive. That very traditional academic, master university, bringing that. I have been there for 20 years, so I have been seeing that. So, I am... Conclusion. We want an education that helps us, that goes to the possibility of being through caterpillar, becoming butterflies. An education to free ourselves of all conceptions, an education to reconnect with our being and presence. The presence that Claudio Naranjo always taught us that it was contagious. The present was, but arriving to the present, that's the point. A presence in love. We are crossing to a new paradigm. A post-patriarchal one. Whatever new paradigm we are crossing, it has to be a paradigm that brings empathy and love to our hearts, reconnects us with nature for the survival of future generations. The new paradigm, it has to be related with the feminine. So we can discuss about what is the feminine, what not, but we know all the feeling, emotions, and freeing our inner child, as Claudio Naranjo says. It will not be peace in the world until we have peace in ourselves. We know both, all of us know it, and we have hope. We are birthing an ancient future, not here, what we are doing. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. So, unfortunately, because of the technical problems we had at the beginning, normally, we are over the session, but maybe if there is 1, 2 questions to any of the presenters, maybe we can ask some question before, because this is there's a break now. So if you want to spend 5 minutes. No questions?
No, everything is very clear.
Also, maybe question among the presenters also. It's not exactly a question, but it's a remark, because we talk about, especially you, Michael, about psychotherapy being an individual process. And yes, in indigenous cultures, as I have seen in different continents, it was not a personal problem. When someone was suffering, the community was somehow in unbalance. and to get back to some healing or to some harmony again. All the community, all the family, all the village, it depends, had to be involved in the therapeutic process. You mentioned that, Michael, in some cultures in South America. I also saw that, in Senegal and also in Morocco, in the Gnawa tradition. All the ceremony when there is some, let's say, a person who is ill, then everybody has to come up and be part of the healing process. So it cannot be only something personal. We put, in Western cultures, when someone, is ill, he can go to an hospital, and there they will take care of this person without integrating the environment, familial or community. And I think this is also something we should change. And in my practice, from the beginning, I always love working with groups. I work more with groups than individual sessions, because I've been able to experience, how the group energy, I talked about the energy field, and the group energy, is giving much more potential, to the transformation of each person. And people, they often refer to a new group of exploration as a family. Even in EUROTAS, we speak about a family. What does it mean? It means we have the need of this community in which we share common values, and we know we can support each other, in the process of transformation or evolution, and also not also in our personal transformation, but a collective transformation, because I think it's very, very important. So therapy, we talk about psychotherapy, education, and this is for me connected all together. So that was my thinking. That's all? Nothing else? Okay, so thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing, because I think it was very interesting. Integration is very important. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you, Michael. And maybe see you again in another conference would be very nice. Thank you.